Good evening and welcome to the March 4th, 2026 Board Workshop Meeting of the Capistrano Unified School District. Meeting is now in session. The time is 5:04. I'd like to remind everyone that this is an informal workshop for the Board of Trustees. Ms. Swinky, can you please call the roll?
Trustee Castellanos?
Here.
Trustee Pritchard? Absent. Trustee Zollinger?
Here.
Trustee Jones?
Here.
Trustee Adams?
Here.
Trustee Bullicus?
Here.
Trustee Davis?
Here. Dr. Maroon, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Moved by Trustee Jones, seconded by Trustee Zollinger. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 601 to adopt the agenda. The board will now recess to closed session to address the following agenda item: public security. The board will reconvene to open session at approximately 6 p.m. The boardroom will be closed to the public during the closed session portion of the meeting. Present the instruction material adoption cycle.
Thank you, President Davis. Meg and Brad will be presenting the next item, the instructional materials adoption cycle. This presentation is going to provide you with some background information regarding the process, as well as a proposal of a 3-year textbook adoption plan, in addition to the financial implications for that plan. Please, again, as always, stop us anytime if you have questions. Brad is going to continue on and get us started.
Thank you, Craig. Good evening, trustees. So our agenda, whoops, let me go back. Oops, all right, wrong way.
The back.
Oh, it's down below. This is the tricky one. Okay. Almost there. Okay. So good evening, trustees. Our agenda, we're going to first take a look just at the state's curriculum adoption process, which sort of sets the context for our process. Then we'll take a look at our district process, and then we'll make some recommendations for our timeline for the adoption of instructional materials going forward. Really over the next 8 to 10 years is sort of what you'll see this evening. So. I don't know that all of us will be here in the next 10 years, but yeah. So our curriculum instruction and administrative team is here on the board, and they're also in our audience this evening. So Dr. Irvis and I leading curriculum instruction for both secondary and elementary. Mr. Jones, our executive director for secondary curriculum, and Karen Gautier and Rihanna Sartoris are supporting our 4 core adoption areas. So science and math being the 2 key areas for Ms. Gautier, and then ELA and history for Ms. Sartoris. So as we look at the 3 entities at the state that sort of guide curriculum adoption process, there are kind of 3 key groups. The first, of course, is the California Department of Education, and that is where we can find resources such as the standards, frameworks, materials recommended, but they do not actually guide the adoption process. That actually falls to the Instructional Quality Commission, which is actually a body that convenes review committees to review instructional materials, that then a recommendation is made to the State Board of Education. So ultimately, the State Board of Education that's making recommendations, it's determining curricular materials that they are recommending to districts to use that they believe are well aligned to state standards and the state framework. So then the roadmap is typically the state will develop or update their curriculum framework. and that's going to align to state standards and support instruction grounded in research. It's not always the case that the state will revise their curriculum frameworks ahead of a new adoption cycle. In fact, what's interesting is for the ELA adoption cycle coming up, there's no change to the 2014 curriculum framework, with the exception of some additional guidance documents that they've added to the framework, specifically kind of really wanting to address the importance of the science of reading and addressing the need for strong instruction in reading foundational skills, which is good. So that, but there's no material change to the 2014 framework in this example. Publishers are then evaluated by that state instructional review committee, that instructional quality commission, and a list of publishers is then selected by the state board to be on the state's approved list of curriculum. When they did a math adoption recently, there was quite a few that they recommended that they felt met the criteria. So we don't know how many they will select for the upcoming ELA adoption, but it could be more than just a few. It was a few years ago, those of us who have been around a few years, there was a time when it was very few that they recommended. I think at one point it was only 2. So it's changed since then, yeah. They haven't finished yet. So the ELA is they haven't completed that process yet. They will have, that will be announced to the public, we hope, by November of this coming year. So that would be the anticipated timeline. And then, of course, we can then begin the process of selecting our materials once that.
Can we make a clear distinction between recommended and approved? Because we couldn't, as I understand it, take the U.S. history curriculum that's approved by, say, Vermont, and start using it because it is not approved for use in California.
Correct, yes.
So there's recommendations along the line, but you then are either approved or you're not.
Correct.
And for some subjects, you know, the electives and such, often there's no approved but the core subjects are pretty much all approved, right?
So there's a distinction between K-8 and high school. So the state recommends or approves material to be used by districts K-8, and it's tied to funding. So you could go off list, but you would lose certain funding streams. So in K-8, school districts almost entirely select from the state list because it would be a loss of resources. There isn't the same process in high school. There are rules about adopting, but it's not from an approved list.
Could I ask a quick question about, on page 21, the state governance? Under CDE, it says curriculum frameworks and instructional resources division manages the public website, collects fees, facilitates, and the rest of it. What collects what fees? I was just curious, if you know.
Yeah, I know we added that. Dr. Irvis, do you know what that's referring to right this minute?
Yeah. Just
If I
out
had
of
to guess, I
curiosity.
would say publishers, but we can look into it.
Yeah, we can look
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Not
And then-
us,
Not us.
not us.
Right. Well, that would be interesting, like, just from the publisher's perspective. And they're collecting, that sounds a little shady.
Like I said,
Yeah.
I said it was an assumption. We will check.
Yeah,
But
okay.
Let's not get too far
Then
down that.
also, on the same page, IQC is an advisory body that recommends schedules, et cetera. Who is that made up of? Who makes up the advisory body?
So, I mean, there's state, the board obviously identifies key members of that commission, but then they
Right.
actually reach out to teachers and administrators throughout the state. So when there's an instructional materials adoption process, and my wife has actually served on this actually, so they will invite people, educators, to actually be part of review teams that will review curricular materials.
Okay, so
So
it's
interesting they mentioned
educators.
that.
What was that?
Trustee Adams, because one of our members is actually on the review committee. So Ms. Sartoris is actually
Yes, I saw that. That's
on
awesome.
in the state ELA instructional materials review committee. So she'll be reviewing a set of materials, but not all of them, but she'll be assigned to one publisher or two and be asked to review those materials. And the value that brings to us, because Brianna's going to assist us in our process, is that she'll have that insight
Right.
from the state. in terms of the rubrics they're using and the questions they're asking about materials, which is going to be very helpful to us. as we
That's
go
It's usually a pretty broad-based committee. I mean, I was on it many, many years ago, so the fact that they asked me as a relatively new teacher at the time, broad-based.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, when my wife served, we got pallets of materials that were delivered to my garage, which stayed there for at least 7 or 8 years. And then, I don't know why I kept them, but it was open court, actually. Yeah, so,
Back in the day.
back in the day. Yeah. All right, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Irvis.
So for our adoption timeline, it is developed in sync with the state's adoption timeline. So as the state either adopts a framework or updates recommendations for an existing framework, that generally triggers our intention to adopt materials. And as Brad mentioned, it's roughly on an 8 to 10-year cycle. It used to be back in the day almost consistently on a 7-year cycle, and it's been pushed out as there are more opportunities to give feedback to frameworks, just based on where we are in the world with technology and the ability to gather input from a variety of sources in new and different ways. There's a lot more to updating a framework. And so we're roughly on that 8 to 10-year cycle with the state. So as Brad mentioned, the example now is ELA. The framework is the same, but there are additional recommendations. And so we're entering into an adoption phase. Then as a district, we establish for any curriculum we're considering adopting a steering committee made up of teacher leaders who have particular understanding, knowledge of that curriculum area. And they initiate the process of identifying our look-fors, our priorities, what is it that we as a district need to ensure we include in an adoption. So we want to make sure that it's hitting our priority students, our students with a variety of needs, and addressing the district's model for whatever curriculum implementation we're going to do. And they create the rubric that lets the committee know our look-fors. So then it goes to the, I'm supposed to be clicking. Sorry about that. So that was that one. And then material review and evaluation. So the steering committee, the subcommittee, as it's named in the board policy, reviews and narrows the selection. So if, for example, the state approves 8 different vendors for elementary ELA, it is not realistic to pilot 8 different material. So we're going to have the steering committee narrow the focus so that we're putting fewer options in classrooms and we can really delve into the curriculum. We generally want, as we move into a pilot, teachers to pilot generally 2 different selections, could be 3, that's a lot within a school year, and provide feedback. So in that pilot process, the steering committee is generally also piloting, but we expand it to include a greater number of teachers. So we want teachers from across the district, teachers that teach different types of students. So we would want teachers who teach students with IEPs, students who are English learners, students who are GATE identified, and at different grade levels and different schools. We want, the intention would be to have broad representation so that we can make the best choice that works across our district schools.
Can I ask something about that?
Of course.
Is how easy, or do you get a lot of teachers that volunteer for that? Yeah?
Generally, yes. Yes.
Do, okay.
There's generally a strong interest
There is.
in having a say in the curriculum. And what sort of the intention would be, if I know that Brad's on it and we have the similar viewpoint on what we're looking for, then maybe I wouldn't feel as compelled to participate. And so I would say the participation at elementary is more broad, multiple grade levels. Secondary, it's slightly less, but still passionate individuals who want to have a say in the curriculum that's chosen.
That's good.
And as a comparison for anyone who might have been around a long time ago, we used to pilot, so Brad would pilot one and I would pilot the other. And that was a really difficult model because how do we compare when we've only seen half of the options?
Right.
So anyone who's participating in the pilot process in Capistrano Unified for a long time now is agreeing to pilot any material up for consideration so that they themselves can compare the two plus and make recommendations.
And do they, I'm sorry, do they pilot two in the same year? Do they?
Yes.
Wow.
Generally, yes. So the
Yeah.
minimum expectation typically is that they would take a sample curriculum through an entire unit of study, from introducing the unit until the final assessment. Because within textbooks, each unit or chapter, depending on how they're chunking it, has the same components, just a new set of standards that those components are covering. So generally, we try and time it that they can at least get through an entire unit, and then they do an entire unit of the other curriculum.
Okay.
Additionally, in that pilot process, we are gathering feedback from students and parents in addition to the teachers participating. So we use survey models to gather information from parents and students who are experiencing the pilot from that perspective.
Okay.
Yes.
So you
Typically-
probably try to get, this teacher's going to do unit 1, unit 2, so that, because nobody's piloting the entire curriculum.
Correct.
I-
They'll review the entire curriculum, but they're only actually teaching a chunk of it or a piece of it.
I have a question. I've been around long enough. I remember the days of the year before all that science had come in. It was a real issue between elementary and secondary because a teacher in secondary could get new curriculum and, generally they're teaching in the same subject matter or maybe two. But when all of a sudden we'd have English and math, the same year for elementary, it was daunting. So I get, personally, I get our process here at the district. What I want to ask, do you happen to know when it comes to the state framework and a 10-year, 8 to 10 year, are other states as slow as we are? Because to me, an excellent example is, and we've got the ladies in the front here, let's talk AI. If we wait 8 to 10 years before we have curriculum, and they were steadfast, and we had Stephanie Avera actually on the CSBA committee guiding that, we're ahead of most school districts on that. And so when we have our mission statement to prepare our students to meet the challenges of a rapidly changing world, we are so frickin' slow in California. Do you know how we compare to other states?
I don't know how we compare to other states, but one of the changes, having been around for a really long time myself, is that because at this point, really anything we adopt has a digital component, and that is updated regularly. And so gone are the days where that textbook is as it is and it's not going to change. The resources that we have that accompany the textbook do change and get updated throughout the adoption, and that's part of the package.
As long as we've approved the vendor, right? So that's the part of approving the vendor, and that's one of the things we would look at when looking at a vendor is it going to be static for 10 years, or is it going to be changed? The other thing I would say is where we get to do our work, so is I would say pedagogy versus curriculum, right? Curriculum is the standards you're going to teach and the book you're going to adopt, but pedagogy becomes the instructional strategies that the teachers are using. So you might be using instructional strategies that didn't have AI for those standards, and now we're going to support our teachers and give them an AI training, and then they're going to use instructional strategies that do leverage AI as an instructional strategy without the curriculum changing, because the California standards didn't change, right? The standards for the spiral reading standards and the spiral writing standards. So we do get to speed ourselves up, provided we have the resources to do so on the instruction side of the house, even if we can't speed up the curriculum side. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but curriculum adoption is prohibitively expensive. And so while it has taken longer for the state to produce frameworks ever since the shift to Common Core, before it was on a 7-year cycle, many districts did not adopt on a 7-year cycle because they simply couldn't afford to. They couldn't afford to rebuy every 7 years. So many districts were already on a 10 or 12-year cycle. even though the state had a faster cycle. So that's the other, I think, part of it that comes at that middle ground of 10 years. Like, we don't have to do an adoption. We're going to propose some options, but we don't have to do one.
Can you give me an example, like reading? What's going on in elementary and all of the talk now in terms of like some revolutionary reading now, the science of reading.
Right.
So break it down for
Break it
me. I'm
down.
not an educator,
Okay.
but we're trying to help make decisions
Yeah.
here.
Well, so, and interesting, tomorrow I'll be at Wood Canyon, we'll be talking about it. So, essentially, we have to make sure that we are teaching kids to effectively decode the text on the page in order to comprehend the text, right? I've been around a few years, and when I first started as a sixth grade teacher at a K-6 school, I had kids who in sixth grade couldn't read. And the methodology we employed at the time, which was whole language, was not helping kids learn to read. So there was a whole methodology for teaching reading that wasn't serving students. And it wasn't based on anything that the science was saying, but there was a concern that teaching kids explicitly how you connect the sounds of the English language to print was somehow low and ineffective and rote memorization, and wasn't actually helping kids, pull the words from the page. That if you surrounded them with print and gave them comfortable settings around and put a lot of books in the classroom, that they would discover how to learn to read the same way that you acquire the ability to speak. So children naturally learn to speak. They don't naturally learn to read. And so we have to explicitly teach them to read by making the code that is our sound spelling system explicit and clear to them. Now, the challenge is always that some children seem to have deciphered the code before they even get to us, right? Parents read to them a lot. They seem to be able to read words. They come in, they're reading, and it feels like teaching them phonemic awareness or teaching them phonics is taking something away from them or slowing them down, which really isn't the case. I had one of those. My son was an avid reader, reading Harry Potter at grade 2, but he wasn't a very good speller because he didn't connect sounds and spelling, right? He didn't connect the patterns of the English language initially. I mean, he's fine now, but he didn't initially have that in place. And if he'd received more explicit, direct instruction on foundational reading skills, he would have been more successful. And so the Common Core really did address that. It did say foundational reading is important. But I think our initial curriculum adoptions were still hanging on to some old teaching strategies that were even evident even in the current adoption, right? So our current adoption is much better than what was before, but one of the reasons I'm excited about the possibility of adopting new materials is that we can get all on the same page in terms of how to teach reading, so that some of the coherence we've established in math instruction with our more recent adoption across the district, we can employ in elementary reading instruction as well. We're much better. With all the Orton-Gillingham training and the Hegarty, and we're supplementing our core program quite a bit. It would just be nice if it was all coherent and in one program, and so that would support a more coherent approach to teaching reading, which I think would then help accomplish your goal of reading by third grade, because we're okay. 70 to 80% of our kids are reading by third grade, but that means there's 20 to 30% that are not. And it doesn't matter what your background is, you can learn to read. So we need to help all kids learn to read. That's sort of my mission too. And I know it's our superintendent's mission, it's your mission. So I just think that this will be helpful. I think our teachers also want it too. They would love to have something that we're all using and that we're all on the same page. And so so we would like to, you'll see as we go through, that we would like to start next year. We'd like to actually pilot materials next year. We'll be kind of in step with the state. So we'll obviously need to watch to see what the state recommends by November. will be right in the middle of our process, and so we might have to make some shifts. Like if we were going down a road with something that wasn't state recommended, we might have to adjust. I don't think we will, but we would hope to bring curriculum to you. Again, if it's supported by all of you and we have the resources to do it, bring something to you a year from now for adoption for the 27-28 school year. Yeah.
I'm sorry to have to sidebar this, but it's pretty important to me because I know there were teachers in some of our two-way schools who were very disappointed in the adoption last time.
Yep.
And my understanding is that the primary complaint was that the literature provided in Spanish was not authentic. It was translations of, and I just want to make sure we don't make that mistake again, because we're either going to teach two-way immersion or we're not. And if we are, we need to be doing it right. Okay.
Yeah, and we will be calling this a language arts adoption. So my goal, it would be to have a Spanish language arts aligned with our English language arts and be both of equal quality, right?
Okay, thank you.
So and we will have LI teachers on our committee to make sure we're looking for those very things, so.
You may have answered this already, I can't remember. Do we know which ELA curriculum publishers we're piloting for next year? We don't know yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I know a little bit, but
No,
but
for 26, 27.
We don't know which
We
ones
haven't
are,
started that
Hasn't
process.
identified them yet.
yeah, the state hasn't even approved a list of vendors
Got
yet.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to be kind of sailing with them a little bit, but we will, I think we'll know which ones are on the list by the summer, and then that'll guide our process. And like I said, if they come out with a recommendation of something that, or don't recommend something that we were looking at strongly, we'll have to make a shift, but I doubt that's going to happen. It's usually some pretty clear programs out there that we tend to be looking at, and they're likely to be approved. And we have our inside person on, can kind of guide us as well with Rihanna being on that committee. I think that's going to help, so. Anyway.
So continuing with our district adoption timeline, so we'll be in a pilot phase. And then once the pilot is concluded, we've gathered feedback from students, parents, teachers, bringing it back to the steering committee. All of the participating teachers review that data and come to consensus on materials to recommend for adoption. At that point, that recommended adoption goes to the IMRC. The Instructional Material Review Committee reviews the materials and also the process that committee used to arrive at those materials. And then if they are in support, they vote to send those materials forward to the board. Because as you know, but I'm stating for the public, it is the school board who ultimately votes to select materials for our classrooms. Yes, of course.
I'm just curious about the teachers piloting. How many teachers participate in that, and do all the teachers who want to participate have an opportunity to, or is it just a number?
Yes, so it depends on which it is. If it's a subject in high school, if it's biology, we invite all biology teachers to participate. Maybe we would get 70 to 80%. In elementary, we need representation TK5
Yeah.
across the district, across schools.
Trustee Zollinger, the only thing I would say is the only reason we might not have somebody on would be if we have too many of one and not enough of something else, right? So if I have all these fifth grade teachers want to be on the pilot, but I don't have enough second and first, I would want to have a representative group of all those grade levels and all of those groups, right? Because we're ultimately going to vote on something. And so if it's upper grade heavy or primary heavy, that would be a problem. So that would be the rationale for maybe saying no to some, just so that we can get some
Right.
equality.
Totally understandably.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, how many teachers do you typically, especially elementary, have to say no
I think we
to?
had 90 last time. What was it for math? 83 in the math adoption, so
Nice.
pretty good.
And is the consensus at the end usually pretty, like, do most of the teachers usually agree on, or is it? No,
No,
okay.
not always.
I haven't participated
Yeah.
in this
I
yet, so I'm
think in
not
the
sure.
math adoption, it was like 80-20.
Yeah, it was strong.
So it
Oh,
was
okay,
strong.
that's what I wanna
But you
know.
still had 20% who, no, I want that one. And
Yeah,
like you hear me say often, unfortunately, there's nothing we're going to do that is universally everyone's like, yep, that's the right decision.
Right,
So.
right.
What we would do is that's why the rubric's going to be so important. What we establish is, this is the rubric we're using to evaluate the materials. And then as we come to that consensus process, if there's people that are feeling like, well, I don't think this, maybe the majority feels some way, but somebody's not feeling that way. The process I would want to employ is I would want to hear from those people, like, because they may be sharing something that's a blind spot for the rest of the group. We would need to hear that group out and then go back to our rubric and look and see, and then maybe we re-vote or we look for consensus again. And I'll be very much a part of that with Ms. Sartoris so that, we'll make sure that we can get to that consensus, because we don't want to adopt something that people, if there's a major problem with it, we want to make sure we have the right materials.
Well, it's good to know that the pool is so large, though, too. And I understand you're never going to get everyone to agree, but I just wanted to.
But
get
you
an
also
understanding.
want to get kind of a cross-section of the district, some Title I schools, some two immersion schools,
Yes.
some non-Title I schools, et cetera. Okay.
Question, do teachers get stipends for participating in this?
If we not a stipend, but if we hold after-school meetings, we're going to compensate them for their time being part of it. And then we might have to have them here during the day too. We would obviously cover with subs. So that's what we'll budget for.
Because we always want to have our experts. Do we ever ask principals for recommendations for those who
Yes.
have offered their services?
Yeah, we're going to, our plan for the ELA is to put out a survey to all teachers if they want to express interest, but we'll also get feedback from principals as well as we look, because we'll have a steering committee that won't be quite as large as the whole pilot. So we'll need feedback from principals on that, and the principals will be on that steering committee as well. They obviously can't pilot the materials, but we want site administrators to be part of our committee as well.
Once the materials are sent to the IMRC and approved, it says, then they're made available for a 30-day public review. Can you describe that process for the public?
Absolutely. So moving into that slide. So, but that was the perfect handoff. I appreciate it. It's like we planned it. So yes, we have the materials sit out for public review for a minimum of 30 days. It is generally longer than that. And that is managed by our Instructional Materials Center, which we call the IMC. So tonight we're using two acronyms, IMRC, that's the 15 members who move curriculum forward to board. IMC is the language we use to describe the center that houses all of our curriculum. So there is a public review process, and that is part of the board packet will say that those materials are on review. And any member of the public can come and see those materials here at the district office, and we can make arrangements if there's any difficulty with that. And like I said, it's generally more than 30 days. And then once the materials are adopted, so assuming that trustees vote to adopt the materials, they remain available for public review indefinitely. For as long as we're using those materials, they are housed in the IMC and available for public review. They're also on school sites available for public review as well. So board approval, and then they go into the IMC indefinitely. And then once they are approved for use, then we go into our implementation phase. And that includes professional learning, assessment alignment, ongoing monitoring. We're doing professional development, staff trainings, bringing teachers back to learn the new material. And for example, with math in both elementary and middle, the teachers all receive training prior to the start of the school year and at the beginning of the school year, and then again throughout the school year to support a strong implementation in an ongoing way.
This might be a funny question. Is there any kind of mechanism once we begin implementing a curriculum and it's kind of like, ooh, this isn't what we thought it was, or this isn't as great as we hoped it would be? is there any kind of like fix or all sales are final, right?
The books are ours once we purchase them. If
Right.
there was a fundamental issue, we would expect the publisher to provide updates in the form of a supplemental booklet, depending on what it is, if they suddenly realize we are missing something, or in the online resources. And over time, as research comes out, it is dynamic, and so we bring in supplemental materials when needed, when we find that there is a lack in a curriculum.
I would also add that because we control the timeline on our side, it would not be unheard of to say, we have two or three that we're piloting. We've discovered that really one or two of them is not going up to snuff, and we would extend the pilot another year to bring in other vendors, right? Like, so we're not going to just, well, we have to finish in 1 year of a pilot, so we'll take one of these two because we have to. If the teachers pilot both and are like, these are unacceptable, we would start over and repilot. So the goal is not to just rush to the finish and just to select something, but it's to make sure they get something we like. In fact, we've recently done a 2-year pilot with materials to make sure that that happened. We have done that. So we control the timeline. So we don't have to finish at the end of the first year if the materials are unacceptable.
I believe we had something akin to that with our physics pilot, where the initial, when we did bio and chem, we weren't happy with the physics options, and so extended that and continued to look for better resources for that particular subject. Okay, so here is a general plan of when we would consider adoptions around that 10-year cycle. There are a lot of things that go into developing the plan. So I think this was brought up earlier. Part of that is staggering the implementation. So what is unique, for example, in elementary school is all teachers teach all subjects. And so it would be unwise to do a math adoption and a science adoption in the same year for elementary, because the same person is teaching that material. In secondary, it's by subject, so that impact is not the same. However, it's also the capacity to support. And so we have an amazing humanities coordinator and STEM coordinator, but it's a small and mighty K-12 team. And so we want to stagger implementation both on the sites side and on the district side so that we can fully support each of our pilots and adoptions. And then the cycle that we have on this piece of paper is very likely to change based on changes at the state. So if the state delays the history framework, we're going to be waiting for the aligned materials to come out. So this is a general guide for us. We have a fairly solid idea of what's coming in the next 3 years, but then we would adjust the overall 10-year plan based on state actions, budget, and other factors at the time. So that leads us to what's coming next. Our recommendation for consideration, if restricted funds are available, and what we're using for our adoptions are restricted funds, we're recommending a 26-27 elementary ELA, ELD pilot and adoption. So piloting throughout the year, coming to consensus, moving it to the IMRC, moving it to the board. So we're recommending that process in 26-27 for ELA, ELD, and those are adopted in conjunction.
Add Spanish as well. So I probably should have said language arts there. So language arts, elementary language arts.
So then in 27-28, while we're implementing that adoption, so doing professional development and support, and teachers are utilizing that curriculum in the classrooms, we would initiate a high school math pilot and adoption. And when we speak to high school math pilot, we're specifically talking about algebra, geometry, algebra 2. When we get into, in high school, other offset like AP Calc, there is a different timeline because those are more driven by the test changes. So when they redo a test, we look at our materials to see if they're aligned to support preparation for that exam. But so when I say high school math, we're specifically focused on algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 in 27-28 for a pilot. And then those materials would be implemented in 28-29. And we would initiate a secondary language arts and ELD adoption in that year for middle school and potentially high school, depending on what's available. So that's our 3-year focus. Oh my gosh. I
I
should
have
not
a
be allowed
question
to be in
about-
charge of it.
Oh, I have a question about math, secondary math. It seemed to me that last time there was a lot of conflict, and I may not really be remembering this well, about integrated math versus the Algebra 1, geometry, et cetera. And I am not a math teacher. I am the farthest thing from a math teacher. But my sense was that a lot of people who had worked in both systems felt that for students, integrated math really worked better. But it seemed as though teachers in this district who have never worked with integrated math fought against that. And I guess I'm just, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I'm a little concerned that we could get that same response this time. And I don't have a dog in this hunt. I just felt like I was hearing from people whose opinion I respected and seemed to know a lot about this, that students benefit from integrated math and that we were not getting acceptance from that idea.
So it is more common to have the model that we have in place, the algebra, geometry, algebra 2.
Right.
And both models can serve students because ultimately it's the quality of instruction. And that's what we would be focusing on. There are some challenges to shifting in the middle of a student's pathway because we have done standard alignment for an algebra course, a geometry course, and algebra 2. So to go into an integrated math model where those standards are taught in a different order, combined differently, that's a significant shift. We can look at the time we're doing that in 2 years to see what the state has available as potential curriculum and how it would work best for our district. But the more common model is what we have here in Capo.
Okay.
The state has tried multiple times to do integrated math and integrated science. I don't know if you guys remember integrated science from the early 2000s. And it has not gotten widespread adoption either time in either math or science because it's just, A, not the historical context, B, it's hard pedagogically on teachers who've done their entire career in one sort of model to switch to an entirely different model that they were never trained for. So the training load is hard. It's hard for kids to move in and out of districts as they move. So for parts of the state that have high migration rates, that's really tough on kids to move in and out of districts with different models. And it's not necessarily always dual enrollment friendly. It doesn't match our Saddleback partners in the classes they're going to offer. So there's been a lot of logistic challenges to it. So it's one of those things that's been a great idea on paper. I taught integrated science for years, but it didn't actually work for non-academic reasons.
Another quick question. In sixth grade, as a parent, I only knew what my school was for my kids. So at Newhart, Jeff Jones' time, they had, for sixth graders, they would have a teacher that they would have twice. And I think the combo was usually English and history, that they would have the same teacher. Do we still do that?
Right now, we don't have that model. We have
Okay. I haven't been
exclusively
updated.
math teachers teaching math, history teachers teaching. But that occurred when we shifted to the middle school model. So when I don't know the exact timing for you, but when we brought sixth graders onto the campus, we had a lot more of the block period of ELA social studies and math science. There are some challenges with that as well. And so we have been for a long time now having those classes taught. I can't say it would never happen again because if we decided that was what was best for our students, we could look at that. But right now, that is not a model we have at any of our sites.
sorry, we were having a sidebar here just to kind of talk a little about that. Part of that's credentialing, right? So when we move 6 into 7th, 8th middle school, you can theoretically teach 6th grade with a multiple subject credential, an elementary credential. And so actually some districts went to what was called self-contained 6th grade, where it was just like K through 5, where the teacher taught all subjects. But in a world of declining enrollment and smaller things, you might have a 6th grade math teacher who also teaches 7th grade math. And that 7th grade math cannot be a multiple subject credential, right? So when you talk about it's a math teacher and a science teacher at the middle school level, especially for some of our small K-8s and small middle schools, like Hankey, there's no way they can have a 6th grade math science teacher, so they have to be able to teach multiple. So that kind of changes it.
And I may not have understood it correctly at the time, but I think I was told that it's a way to ease a grade school child into middle school without as many, bouncing around. And the only reason that it made me think of it is to see that English and science, while they were adopted at different years, were looking to implement the same year. And so that's what made me think of it.
I have another question, sorry. I would love to find out, I'm so grateful to understand the process, so thank you for this presentation, for sure. I do get a lot of complaints about our math curriculum that was just recently adopted, and a lot of teachers tell me they have to supplement it with previous years of curriculum that they had. Some of them are even going back like 20 years. They're pulling things to get some of the pieces that they feel like are missing. So just so I understand the process, would it be possible for me to pull like what the committee said during that adoption period and just what the numbers were? I'm curious what the discrepancy was, and maybe there wasn't a program that everyone was going to be happy with. Maybe just our choices were limited. And maybe
Absolutely. We maintain those records, so we can get you feedback that was provided for, is it specifically elementary or middle?
I get more middle, but I hear it in elementary too. And maybe it's just a new curriculum that they're getting used to, but I don't know. I've heard enough from enough different teachers and different sites that I'm like, I would love to see how that went down.
So we absolutely can provide that feedback to you. We do have that, and
Great.
I know that Karen's getting her to-do list right now. Additionally, it isn't uncommon when we implement a new curriculum. It is generally also tied to some shifts in pedagogy. And so math is different now. And so that's sometimes a heavy lift for a teacher. And so it may feel like it's the curriculum that is clunky, but really it is different. And so it can take time for a teacher to learn the curriculum and find all the pieces where they knew where that was in their previous curriculum, how to put it together, where the students were likely going to struggle, how to supplement that. So it is a common process. It's like growing pains. But if we did become aware of true things that were not available, we would add additional resources and have those available through Canvas for teachers. So we can definitely get you that information.
So much. That's good to hear.
I've also heard similar conversations with middle school teachers in particular, and I think standards have changed somewhat in math.
They have, they've changed where they're being taught and the rigor of the classes. So there are just a lot of shifts and moving away from the kind of I do, we do, you do model where it's been provided in a different way, and it's more of a kind of a discovery model and a focus on problem solving, a focus on critical thinking in math. So it's really a shift in so many ways. And so the curriculum is designed to support that shift, but the shift is challenging, and we're providing support for that as well. And ultimately, that material, when we do a pilot, we don't vote. We're not part of the process. So it is the teachers who piloted the material who ultimately move it forward for adoption. But then I don't know, I can't think of an adoption we've had in my time that didn't come with the growing pains we're experiencing right now with math, because it's the newest.
Well, perhaps in our training, we can share that if we don't like either, then we bring it back next year. And especially now that we are hopeful to have more options moving forward, that would be a better piece. But math has not changed. Clark's job in math has not changed. His addition, his everything that he's going to calculate for our budget, that has not changed. And I hope we're preparing our students to have Clark's job someday.
Yeah, I would say that
So there's some pieces to math that math doesn't change.
right, I think what has changed though is that historically math has only worked as taught for about 20% of the population. And the goal is for it to work for far more than 20% of the population.
Like 100.
So what's changed is the understanding of how people learn math. Not saying people didn't learn math before, they absolutely did, about 20% of them. And the other 80% would say, I'm just not a math person, right? And the reality is anybody can be a math person, but it takes a different style, kind of like that phonemic awareness and reading. Turns out whole language, yeah, some kids still learn to read that way and can comprehend and decode, but it was fewer of them than if they had done phonemes and decoding and those types of things. It's the same with math, right? So this is aligned to research, which has shown that more students will be able to do better at math if they understand the core underlying concepts, which is a huge shift for someone who's taught it for 20 years one way, and definitely not an easy shift. And it's a challenge, but we have to get more than 20% of our kids historically to know math. So
100%. We do not have 20% of our kids that are
we do not, but
successful
they
in math.
definitely didn't research just Capo. Like historically, I mean, statewide, it's still only like 30%, right? So, and nationwide, it's really low as well. And we're one of the lowest scoring nations in the world in math historically. So that sort of historic way of teaching math has not worked well for the American public in general. And so this is a switch.
Well, and teaching math facts needs to continue so that you can then build, right? If you don't know your math facts, it is very difficult to move on, especially sixth grade. It is a critically important spot that they come in with those solid skills. But Common Core was also rolled out, that it was the newest, latest, greatest. So some things we have to navigate carefully, and we need to make sure teachers are trained properly and that they have the support they need. And as it rolls out and may or may not exactly work well, then we have to pivot and make sure the support is happening.
And I would encourage, if a teacher is giving you a specific complaint, to please refer them to Karen. So like, what is that specific thing as opposed to a general, I don't like it? But if there's a specific, it's missing this particular piece of content that our kids need to move on, then we really need them to share that with us so that we can make it changes. So if they're only talking in one area, not another, that's not super helpful for us.
Just to add to that, on that subject real quick, is the training, but then I assume it's on the principal to ensure that their teachers are comfortable. When we switched over in elementary to, and I believe it was fourth grade, the history book, and it was the workbook versus, and I don't remember now at this point, the names. And I had a teacher at Bathgate that voted for the one, but the workbook was approved, and then complained about it. And then I inquired about it and then learned, well, there is a way to go online to do. And when I told her about that, and I said, check that out. So my thing is, what do? We train and we hope they've got it, but like, do we ever go back and field questions? Are you good with this? Where do you have questions? It would just be helpful if we could have a recheck.
I think that, I agree, Trustee Ball, because I think with our, the elementary level, at least with our math adoption, we've, and I'm sure there may be some teachers that tell you something different, so I acknowledge that, but I feel like we've done things pretty, in a pretty smart way this time. We obviously got training to teachers, but then we've spent quite a bit of time educating our principals on this curriculum. So we, the last 2 years, Dr. Stewart and I with Ms. Gautier have, instead of meeting here for principal meeting 3 times a year, we go to school sites and we walk in cohorts and we look for what we're expecting the curriculum to look like, the instruction to look like, not to evaluate the teachers per se, but more to learn with the teachers, because the teachers got a new curriculum, they're learning it. And whenever you get a new curriculum, it's got 100,000 different bells and whistles, right? And you don't know what it has and what it doesn't. And sometimes, unfortunately, all we can afford is a couple of days of training. And so and you've got to hit the ground running at the classroom, you come in, you get trained, and I was a teacher, I understand how hard that is. So we keep learning about the curriculum, and we keep learning about what works for students. And I've been pretty proud of what we've done. We've actually just recently videotaped a number of our teachers teaching our elementary math curriculum. We just shared that with our teachers through my newsletter. It goes out 3 times a year. They can now see their peers teaching the curriculum and using the approaches that we're recommending. Because it was a shift. It was a big shift for elementary teachers, because I taught elementary math. You model the problem, you have kids copy what you did, you then assign problems 1 through 33 odd, right? And then kids go home and do it. But then we do something, we do a new skill the next day, and we do a new skill the next day. And so instead of helping the students truly understand conceptually what's happening by solving problems and then having to apply their conceptual understanding to those problems, like if you think back to the old way of teaching math, what was always optional at the end of the math series? Well, the word problems, right? You might assign problems 1 through 33. Oh, and maybe you can do word problem on number 35, right? And how many times would the kids skip it, or, oh, that was too hard, and they wouldn't do it? Well, our new math curriculum actually starts with a word problem. And the kids actually have to solve math and apply the math to something that actually matters, something real. And they're now taking their conceptual understanding, they're building their understanding based on that. They talk to one another. It's in a lesson in iReady Math, or the California, what's the official title?
Math.
Thank you. Classroom Mathematics California is a week. It's not a day. So we're learning a concept over the series of a week, not a single day. So mastery is going to happen over the course of that week, not necessarily just in one day. I've learned something. I've memorized what Dr. Merwin told me, and now I move on to something else. Because see, what happens for elementary kids is that they seem to do okay in elementary. They build all these skill concepts in their brain, or these skills, but then they get into Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and all of a sudden, all of these tricks or strategies that they learned don't sit in anything. So I can't really solve a real problem. Now, can some kids do it? Yeah, but not the majority. And so, again, personally, saw my own personal child struggle in Algebra 2, and he was fine in elementary school. So it wasn't a practical way of approaching. So, but it was a big shift. I mean, the shift in what we asked, and every time I've stood in front of elementary teachers, I have tried to tell them, we are so proud of you, because that was a big shift, and it still is a big shift in teaching math in a different way. So we hear you, and we'll keep responding to whatever you need, like the resources. But we saw test scores go up. So actually the kids are doing better, which is what we want.
Yeah.
And if you take the Smarter Balance assessment, it's full of word problems. You don't get very many problems that just tell you to solve these numbers that are lined up in this nice little row and solve it. So you actually really do have to apply it. And so I think we are serving our students well, and I think it's going to be beneficial for our secondary colleagues, and they're doing more innovative things in math as well. We were just at high school the other day and seeing some good approaches to how math is taught there. So,
And it's
Thanks,
similar,
Debbie.
oh, sorry,
Go ahead. I was
similar
gonna say
support.
Thank you,
Mhm.
thank you for the reminder, because you know what? Actually, taking on the tour and going to see different classes, it kind of provides them a TOSA without TOSAs that we don't have anymore.
Right.
Teachers love to learn from other teachers.
yeah,
And to apply it, so thank you for
we'll
sharing
keep
that. and
doing everything,
reminding
whatever we
us.
can come up with to break down those classroom walls so they can peer into each other's practice and learn from one another. That's obviously what we want.
And similarly, we've done the learning walks at secondary, and also there have been a variety of ways we've been supporting teachers with the curriculum, including staff development, but then also, like I know, after an adoption, we host Zoom happy hours where teachers can join and ask questions about the curriculum. Where is this? I'd like support with that. So it's not, the best practice is not to have a one and done type of a training. The best practice is to have ongoing support as teachers. You're starting your year, you're just getting through it. And then when you're ready to learn a little bit more, we provide a little bit more. And so that's been the strategy K-8 with this most recent adoption, and it continues on to this point.
I want to talk just 1 second about change, and teachers are human beings. Human beings do not like change. When we had the workshop where we talked about the standards-based grading, there was a teacher who mentioned that he had this wonderful activity that he had done for years and years and years. It was one of his favorite activities in his subject. And once he started piloting the standards-based grading, and it was an amazing group of teachers who were very open to the standard-based grading, he realized that there was no standard being taught in it. I thought that was so profound. I will never forget that. And I think that that's one of the adjustments that teachers are having to make with standardized grading. When we brought in the new social studies curriculum, I can't remember now what it's called. I remember talking to Mrs. Barist out there in front one day, and I told her about something that a teacher said to me about something that was not in this curriculum. It was just not available. And she said, well, but there's this. And I went back and I told the teacher, and they said, oh. And when I talked to Peggy about that again, I picked up my phone and I said, how many things are there on this phone that you don't know how to operate? And that's really what we have in a lot of what we do these days. I mean, I'm learning, I've had my car for like 8 years. I'm still learning some of the things that it does. I'm like, oh, I didn't know it did that. And there's so many more things these days that have so many options. And curriculum is a very good example of that, where there's this kind of thing, and there's the one in Spanish, and there's all these other things. And teachers don't always know, and it's hard for them to find out. Again, you were saying we maybe only have the money for a few days of training, so they don't learn this one feature that was really great. Anyway, I'm sympathetic to people's objections, but I also understand some of human nature and some of the world we're in, where we don't really know all the options. And we are sometimes learning that something that we thought was so great is actually not great. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out.
Moving to a different topic, as we're looking at this implementation here, I understand the excitement around adopting next year, but I wonder if we consider waiting a year or two to see how some of the quirks kind of maybe work themselves out, and see if we can turn a good curriculum into a greater curriculum and allow some other districts to go through some of the learning process, and we jump in a year or two down the road. I don't know if that's something, I mean, obviously we're facing budget cuts. Obviously there's money that has to be, there's only so much money in the pie. And so I don't know if that's something that we would want to consider, but I would for certain be interested in pushing this whole calendar down a year or two to allow some of that. And the building on the best practices that could just kind of emphasize continuous feedback from, as we watch other districts and see, because it's been a long time since we've had more options. So.
I'll chime in. Super excited. So thank you so much for the presentation. That was a very good explanation of science of reading, Brad. Very good. When I first started on the board, one of my very first concerns was our ELA adoption. And I'm concerned because I have concerns for children who do not learn to read. So that 20% who, our kids are doing amazing, we have amazing test scores, and we're doing amazing things in this district, right? But there is that group that are really struggling. And when we had our last adoption, when we adopted 2 programs for our K-5, that led me down a pathway of grave concern. Because I think the only child that hurts or struggles with reading is a child that doesn't get consistent curriculum K-5. And so I've been waiting very calmly because I've been told this timeline's coming, right? We're going to do an adoption, Krista, we're going to do an adoption. And so I'm excited because I think for those kiddos, aligning what they're learning in K2, transitioning to 3-5 with our combo classes now, that's another huge concern for me because now you're asking a 2-3 combo teacher to teach not just 2-3, but you have 2 reading programs now. Ultimately, they would have to pick, and they don't have resources. If you're teaching 3rd grade, you don't even have resources for 2nd graders because you're teaching a whole nother curriculum in 3rd grade, as you know, and probably encountered this struggle with your combo teachers in 2-3, right? That's the real struggle where you want to go from learning to read to learn. So that, for me, I'm excited for this timeline to start going. Of course, the concern is funding, because when the funding is not there, then that's when these timelines do automatically get pushed.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw with Open Court, we taught it for 12 years or whatever, and so that was like, are we ever going to adopt? And then finally we got to adoption and everybody was like, yay, we're finally adopting. And so now we have all kinds of things happening with reading, like science of reading. And so that's also shifted our focus. But another thing I think for educators, as I sit in the classroom every single day and for 26 years, like the pendulum likes to swing. And I think we're learning that, like you spoke about, Brad, of whole language concept. I was taught in whole language classroom as a kid and really struggled through the reading process because no one ever introduced me as a 1st grader that there was actually phonics. Had no idea, right? Until I became a teacher. And then they were like, Krista, there's sounds to these letters. And I was like, who knew, right? I had no idea. Because I was literally taught whole language. Like, you look at the word and you'll figure it out. And so reading for me has been memorization.
Yep.
And did I get there? Yes. Can I do it? No problem. Yes, I'm successful at reading, but it took me a very long time to get there because, as we all know now, whole language takes longer than phonics-based instruction, especially explicit phonics-based instruction. And then 2 years ago, I was doing another happy dance because, as Greg remembers, we adopted Haggerty, which I was blown away by and super excited as I teach it every day and believe that that is truly like the golden hour of my day with TK. And so that has been a phenomenal adoption that this board has done as well. So I'm excited for alignment,
Yeah.
truly. And we've learned a lot about reading, and I think we're coming up to the top like of a mountain, and like we're gonna get there, but we're not fully there because we haven't adopted yet. And so I'm super excited about that. And then I know that, you know, I'm just gonna put this out there, and because I have to do plug for TK, obviously. I would love TK alignment with K5. I know that, you know, they just adopted.
Right.
And so they have a different program down here in Capo. I am aligned with K5 in Santa Ana. And the only reason why I think it's helpful is because as we're teaching foundational skills, my kids are transitioning into a kinder classroom. Well, then all of a sudden, all the sound spelling cards change on them. That's not fair to a 4 and 5-year-old, right? Consistency from TK through 5 is really building something for children specifically who are struggling in the reading process. The kids who are getting it and grasping it and can move on from different sound spelling cards, no problem, right? They got it. But it's that group that we struggle with as educators, like we want everyone to get there, and how can we stack the decks for them and create a system that it just makes it easier. So I think, obviously this is my wheelhouse. I love it. I sit in this every day, and this is great. And I really hope that we follow the timeline and we can get there, because I think we've got some things that we could change in this district that would only benefit students. So, thank you.
Adding on to that, let me ask, do we really have a TK separate adoption?
We do.
They don't have a TK through 5 adoption for the state of California when they created TK,
They will for these upcoming resources, there will be.
but not these.
And I think whatever you have, trustee Castellanos, yeah, they adjusted, yeah.
They have TK curriculum now, but it's only really come down the pike in the past couple of years.
The other thing, trustee Davis, is that the current TK, I might get this wrong, it's more comprehensive. So the curriculum, it's all the subjects into one versus just being an English, like, we don't, it's integrated. Yeah, so you get math, you get science, social studies in one, yeah.
But is there a movement to move it to TK 5?
Well, I think most of the
Across the
resources we're going to
state?
be looking at that are becoming,
It's not there yet.
yeah, like all the guidance from the state for this next round of adoption is to include TK.
Yeah, so I will say that,
But our adoption here does not show that.
We're not planning on it, but this is a
Back
great
to
conversation. Yeah.
2 slides.
It'd cost us more money.
yeah, so that'll be something we explore based on, no, go back to where you were. Nope, go back to where you were. Keep going, nope, keep going. There you go. The last sentence will determine sort of how broad that adoption can be, right? Because the goal is to use restricted funding to the extent possible, because
Right.
obviously, as you saw me present last week, our unrestricted funding is declining. So this would be areas where we could try to fund. So if we have enough, we would try to do TK. I would say that we aren't the only district that did a differential TK K2 3-5 adoption. That exists in a lot of places, and most of those districts are trying to get aligned. They did that. There was a belief for a while that, well, this curriculum is great for primary grades and this curriculum is great for the secondaries. And a lot of vendors sort of specialize that way. I came from another district that had done the exact same sort of split and was already trying to figure out how to fund to accelerate their adoption process to get away from the split, to get back to an aligned curriculum. So there is that piece for us as well, is how can we at least get K5 alignment, and in a perfect world, could we get TK5 alignment? So that'll be something we look at as we move forward.
Well, that even supports my thought on pushing it down just a little bit. That might allow us to do a TK 5 alignment there. If we
Depends
can
how
push
the
that.
restricted funds come and when they come.
Yeah.
Well,
What if,
and
could we
even
supplement?
high-quality
like-
materials need adjustment. Even high-quality materials are going to need adjustment. So to allow other districts to go through that adjustment, I'm definitely in favor of that. And allow data from early users to play out, only benefit.
And I'm wondering if we could supplement, like because it seems nuts to me that we would have different word cards. I mean, it seems like pulling the rug from some of these vulnerable kids that are, that need more help. Yes,
We
so I'm
could.
wondering, could you take, like, for example, the TK program, or let's say we find this incredible program next fall, or implement it for the 27 year. Could we take that program and just supplement with their cards and kind of push some things in, or no?
I mean, I don't think there's anything keeping us from buying some more cards and then,
Right.
and they're gonna be short vowels and consonants in TK anyway, but we wouldn't have the lessons that came with those, or there'd be some
Right.
other things that would.
Right, I mean, remember a teacher's, they're following a framework and a standards-based curriculum. So they're teaching by standard, right? But the curriculum is like their resource book. So when you take away all their stories and their themes, and TK, it's very thematic, and so, can you align sound spelling cards? You could definitely align sound spelling cards, but you couldn't really take away, their resources.
Being cognizant of our timeline and our agenda, I will tell you that this was just a early sort of primer into an hour and a half primer into what could be happening in terms of curricular adoption. So obviously more information will come back as we get closer, as we hear from the state over the summer, as we know what the approved vendors are, right? Is it tweaks to vendors that already exist, or are there new vendors coming in? So that'll be all stuff that we bring in as we get closer to determining if, when, how much, all of that. So this was just to get your interest going in what could be happening.
And we're so in.
Yes. We might end up doing a workshop in the fall just on this. No.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and we will move on to 5A2. Reading Board Policy 3515, Campus Security, formerly School Safety and Security. I'd like to recognize Greg Merwin, Associate Superintendent, to present the policy.
Looking to make sure Darren's here. All right, Darren, come on up. So this was first adopted in 1996, revised in 2019. We're looking for your direction, feedback, and any questions you have on Board Policy 3515.
Trustees?
On the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, we're under the paragraph that says surveillance systems on page 33. Talks about these systems, let's see, systems are not designed nor intended to protect individuals from being victims of violent or property crimes, nor to detect illegal activities. However, information can be used in a disciplinary action. My question is, so that, okay, it was actually the next paragraph that talks about, we are not using these systems to monitor areas where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy. So I've had a lot of parents talk to me about high school bathrooms. And what is the surveillance of bathrooms? Because obviously,
So
that
we
would be an
definitely,
area of privacy.
yeah, we cannot put, nor will we put
So
cameras.
how do we monitor the bathrooms?
So the administrations have walkthrough rotations that they vary so that they're not always the same, but as they go around in their supervision, male administrators will walk into male bathrooms to check, female administrators will walk into female bathrooms, same with campus supervisors. They can go in and out, and same with custodians actually, can go in and out throughout the day. So the idea is that it's visual inspection by administrators, and then they kind of vary that up so that it's not always like, well, at 10:02, that we know they're there. Right now,
Right.
we mix and match.
Do we have surveillance cameras on the outside of the bathrooms? Like, so we can,
In most cases, yes.
Not all. We don't have cameras ubiquitously across the system.
right? Okay.
I have a question, but it kind of goes to Colleen Hayes, that I had submitted in regards to page 33, third paragraph, first line, that it has a comma after parents and guardians, treating it separate in every other policy that we're reviewing tonight, and I think across the board, it's parents/guardians. And so.
She dealt with it.
I know, and she wrote me back, but I know what the thought process was, but I don't know what the outcome is. Thanks.
So I'm kind of a grammar nerd on occasion. And so when I looked at that, I looked at it as a list and that we including all these groups. And so I put a comma. I get hung up on that slash and I want to go with the standard and I'll remove the comma and we'll go back to the slash. So I'm for consistency.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't reprinted or whatever, so I just wondered if that was, going to become consistent.
So
It's
we
a
will-
ticky-tacky thing.
Yeah, it will be,
So when you're looking at a list, we're including these list of groups and it's more than two or it's more than one. So in the grammar world, it could be argued that it should be a comma. In our world, when we're doing policies, we look at our parents and guardians as one group, and so I need to stick to the slash. So my thought process may be flawed in this circumstance, and it's kind of a habit. When I go through, I'll stop, and I have to stop myself from doing that.
it will be parents/guardians
Yes,
universally.
I'll put it in our standards.
Yeah, grammatically incorrect, but functionally correct.
Agreed. I just wondered if it was going to be changed.
We'll fix it.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to.
Thank you.
Question about the
5B1, I'd like to recognize Clark Hampton, Deputy Superintendent, Business Support Services, to present the first reading Board Policy 3260, fees and charges, formerly student fees.
Thank you, President Davis. So we're going to do some staff swapping here at the table. But, so B1, 5B1 is bringing the board policy up to date with current ed code. And one thing I would like to point out is on page 40, under collection of debt. This would not apply to debt owed for vandalism or loss or willful damage of textbooks. So this is only for like, if you owed other fees
Is
that
that in here?
didn't pertain to that.
Is that in here, Clark, that it does not pertain to that? It feels like
Well,
it
that's,
should be.
Well, I read it.
Yeah,
it's in board policy 5151.
but not in this policy.
It's not in this policy.
But should it?
There might need to be some
not including?
we'll probably have some clarification after
Okay.
this to say
think
what
that
it
would
does
be
not.
Yeah, I would say I would love a line in the collection of debt section that just points to that other board policy,
Yes, agreed.
right? So we'll just point over to that one.
Yes, thank you. I would as well.
So can you go back then, because the conversation confused me a little bit. So, and I also wanted to know about this, because it says that we'll try to recover these debts, but some of them we can't. So if a student just, like throws their textbook in the swimming pool,
That would be excluded. That'd be willful damage.
damage.
So we
Right.
would be able to recover that. too.
Right.
And in these, you can, withhold transcripts and diplomas
Okay.
for that.
So if the student says that they didn't throw the book into the swimming pool, their friend did, it's somebody else's will for damage. I guess I'm just not sure about this.
We would have to have evidence of that, right? So I mean, we're going to go with it's your book, it's in your possession.
Okay.
And it's being willful damage. That's different than, let's say, I accumulated fees because I didn't turn it in on time. Like, we wouldn't recover those fees.
Exactly.
Right? But
Right.
fees for damage are in textbooks less frequently than Chromebooks, but like the kid who stomped on the Chromebook. Now, whether I stomped on it or my little brother stomped on it, it's sort of irrespective. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to go with it was in your possession and it got willfully destroyed, therefore we can recover the debt.
Right.
As
And-
opposed to it just stopped working due to use, we're not going to worry about that.
I understand that. Okay, so there are circumstances where we can recover debts that students, for books, Chromebooks, any number, I guess, of
So for
things.
example, last spring, and then again in the next few months, we talked about transportation fees for students for
Right.
sports things.
Right.
So for example, if you participate in a sports team and for some reason couldn't or didn't pay that transportation fee, we would not be withholding your diploma to collect that fee, right?
Exactly,
But-
exactly.
But if you broke the windows out on the bus, we would be withholding your
Right.
diploma to collect that fee.
And if you are using, I don't know what equipment belongs to schools and what does not, but I assume, there's a lot of pads and stuff in football, and maybe those belong to the school. And if they don't return that kind of stuff,
Same thing.
it's the same sort of deal. We can recover those
Yes,
debts.
and we can recover any debt from the parents.
Oh, from the parents. Okay,
It's just from a student.
okay.
Clark, I know I read in here somewhere, because I questioned that, and it was in this book somewhere. Is it in a different policy then, where it addressed the fact we can collect for vandalism, destruction, or
That's in BP 5151.
5151?
not
And is
in-
that in?
It's not in here. It's not in here.
Okay.
But can you
It's
refer to
it's a
it?
separate policy that
They're gonna add a
references
line. They're gonna add a line.
how you,
Okay.
what
right.
you can do to
Perfect.
recover those.
That bugs me.
So we're going to add a reference to that here.
So this pertains to sports and any activities, right? If a child in a family cannot afford it, we will cover it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's slightly different, but yes, that has to do with if,
Yeah.
inability
Well,
to
this
pay is different than. sort
Curricular
of- yeah.
and extracurricular activities. So everything's covered.
So I had a question on page 39, the third paragraph. It says, as necessary, the Board of Trustees may approve fees, deposits, and other charges which are specifically authorized by law. When approving such fees, deposits, or charges, establishing fee schedules, or determining whether waivers or exceptions should be granted, the Board of Trustees shall consider. I don't see determining whether waivers or exceptions should be granted as a board job. I see that as a staff job. The rest of it, yes. But that, I mean, I just don't think every time there's like, oh, we're not going to require that.
One-offs would be
it's not gonna
staff. This
come
is
to
more
us.
about like established, so this would be more like if we established a new fee.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we going to accept waivers and under what criteria? That were criteria that would go with that establishment of the fee, that is the board's purview.
Okay.
This is not a one-off, like, should this person be allowed the waiver or not?
Okay.
That would definitely be staff to vet that. But this is, should there be a waiver at all for this type of fee? That's board work.
Okay, so that should
policy.
be then reworded to say, determining whether waiver,
We'll work on it.
yeah,
I'll send
I
you a new
don't want
paragraph.
us to, I don't want it to be thought that we're going to sit down every time someone wants a reduced fee
No,
and
you're
we're
looking
going
at
to
waiver
talk about it.
policy for,
Okay.
because this would be if you're choosing, so like I said, when we talk later about transportation fees,
Right.
when we vote to approve, hopefully approve transportation fees,
Right,
that will go with, and then this would be the waiver. You guys would decide, or we would, and staff would recommend the same waiver policy that we use for AP fee waivers, whatever, would be applied to this as well, and you guys would say
right. And I'm
yes
not
or
thinking
no.
so much about student stuff as I am about like facility rental. And,
That's a different policy.
That's not
That's
related
a
to
separate
this.
policy.
no, this is fees and charges.
But that's not
Yeah, but
for
for
facility use.
business, non-instructional operation.
Yeah.
Curricular and extracurricular activities, not for facility use.
Well, okay, but
Remember,
that's
this
not what
policy
it says
is,
here.
oh, yeah,
Where does it say
Formally,
facility
student
use?
fees.
yeah, it's formally.
It
student.
doesn't say facilities, but doesn't say not facilities. It just says fees and charges. Okay, fine. I just want to make sure that it gets addressed. I just felt like it was
So we'll
was
work on that.
going away from the board's sort of policy function and into actual individual decisions. Okay,
No,
fine.
I'm with you. That needs to be cleaned up. I like it.
Okay, I found the sentence I was looking for. Under collection of debt, it says the superintendent or designee shall, in accordance with law, recover any debt owed to the district as a result of unpaid permissible student fees approved by the Board of Trustees.
Yes. You can't-
That addresses what we
you
were
can't-
asking.
You collect the debt, you just can't take this, you can't take action against the student
So what,
listed here.
yeah, so what this basically policy is, we can collect the debt. However, we can't tell a kid, we will not give you your diploma until you pay that debt.
Right.
Right, so ultimately, the kids could still graduate and leave, and we could collect the debt without ever collecting the debt. But we just have the right to try.
Yeah, we'll still take, take collection measures to recover the debt.
So I don't understand why there's a line that needs to be added, because this
That-
states it.
Because the thing, like, take for example, it says, we can't for this debt deny or withhold grades or transcripts. But we can if it's for willful damage, vandalism, lost textbooks, things like that. That's always been, we've always been able to do that. We would continue to be able to.
So there's an exception to the exceptions laid out here.
Okay.
So we're going to point to the other policy that lists that exception.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, moving on to 5B2, business and sports services. I'd like to recognize Clark Hampton, Deputy Superintendent, to present first reading award policy 3550, food services, child nutrition program.
Okay. Thank you very much. So this policy is to bring us up to date with some of the new nutrition standards that are been in place. And Kristen Hilleman from Food Services here to answer any of your questions related to the policy.
Trustees?
I submitted a whole, let's see, 5 questions. Were they given to you? Okay, so maybe you could just run through them?
I believe that was on the next board policy, on 5030.
Oh, okay.
The
Oh, on the
wellness
student
policy.
wellness.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
So I have a question. I'm going to go to page 50 because it was so many changes that got confusing. Paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where it starts out superintendent or designee. And there's something wrong with this sentence. I don't know what it is, but it says the superintendent or designee shall periodically review the adequacy of school cafeterias and facilities, food preparation and consumption. So,
It's missing the word for.
okay,
And facilities
all right.
for food preparation and consumption. So we
Okay.
have we need to put a word there.
All right, I just couldn't figure out.
Yep,
what it
no,
was
it's
supposed to
missing a
say.
word.
Okay, fine, thanks, I'm done.
Any other comments?
We just
trustees?
want you to know we do read this ahead of time.
So do I, and I still missed that one.
Let's
Okay.
talk about food.
And we'll move on to 5B3. Like to recognize Clark Hampton, Deputy Superintendent, presents first reading of Board Policy 5030, Student Wellness.
Thank you, President Davis. So this is another policy, wellness policy. It's been updated to comply with the latest ed code. But I'd also like to point out under program implementation and evaluation, page 54, and I'm just pointing this out because it's a plus, I think, in this policy, is rather than having just a single individual that's responsible for making sure everything's compliant with the wellness policy, it designates the food site principals to do that, along with support from the nutrition specialists and nutrition services. But it's always nice to kind of spread out the work on making sure that we're complying with the wellness policy.
Is the official title Food Site Principals?
Schools,
So the
school
campus
site.
principal.
Yeah.
Are you ready, Judy?
Oh, I'm ready.
So I will say, just to start off, that the student wellness policy falling under food and nutrition services, it does set up weaknesses for this policy overall, because most people view it as just being food and nutrition, not all the other factors involved in it. So some of your questions stem towards physical education, things like that, and food and nutrition services does not have authority over that. So we look to, we defer questions to those in charge of physical education, mental health, and any other unrelated food and nutrition to answer to those things. Some of you have joined our Wellness Council of recent and in past as well, and so we've spoken to some of those things. As far as number 3, that would be on, what is that, page 55 in your book, the student participation rates. That information is typically provided in the goals in the board presentations on goals. We tell, how many meals we've served throughout the years, things like that, or throughout the school year. This year, right now, we are at 29.5% student enrollment for our lunch average daily participation, and we're at 29.3% average daily participation for breakfast. So we are neck and neck, which,
Do they have to?
well, no, it's universal meals. So everybody gets to eat for free if they want to come and participate in meals.
But we don't make
Okay,
we don't make a meal for every child. It's based on.
So there's forecasting that occurs, just
Right.
like at a restaurant. They don't know how many people are going to show up in any
Right.
given evening. They gauge based on the weather and just different factors that we kind of know.
Okay.
But we do know how many meals we're serving versus how many kids we have, so we can get a rate pretty simply. If we serve, 10,000 meals, we have 40,000 kids. At lunch, we know that we've served, about 25% of our kids, so.
We basically prepare for 30% of our students on the average.
On the average.
Yes.
Which is surprising
And every
considering
school
it's
is
free.
different.
Right, exactly.
Well, our own student board member, after she toured, what did she tell us? I never ate, she figured it was bad food. And then after she toured, oh my gosh, she's been talking about
Video
it. and-
for us.
Oh, yeah.
I had a school lunch this week, Monday. It was fantastic.
You did. You had the baguette
I did.
with garlic aioli, which is a new item we are making in the kitchen, the central kitchen now,
Yeah.
or as a commissary item. So,
Well, we all know because we've been to your tastings.
That's right.
So I just wondered, because when I'm reading standards from the state about how we're handling that, and I've seen driving around on the delivery trucks that, the boxes of oranges that come back. And interesting, I can't think of who I was talking to, just like last night. Where was I? and they said, and it was someone working at a school, they don't like to peel the oranges. When you used to do, this was all explained to me, the
wedges.
quarters in a baggie, they ate those like crazy. And then I said, yeah, but I think the mandarin oranges also that were prepackaged came back, but it was the peeling of the oranges. So you seem to nod and know this, so tell us, so does that like lead us to not do those anymore?
No, we still do provide oranges. A lot of it is tactility, in all honesty, and as students wanting to use their hands, you know. So it is difficult for some kids to peel, and certain oranges are harder because they have thinner skin, they're tighter to the fruit, the flesh inside itself. The green orange.
They weren't.
Oh, no, actually, they were very ripe. They were just grown in the desert, and they were incredibly sweet inside. They were organic, and it's one of those imperfect fruit kind of things, like the imperfect vegetable boxes that you can get.
I want some
They
green
were
oranges.
probably some of the most delicious oranges we've had in the last 2 years, right? I
Green
know.
oranges at our next board meeting.
We just tried some raspberry oranges recently that are similar to a blood orange, but they have a thicker skin and it's looser to the actual fruit, the flesh inside. So those are easier to peel. Think of like a clementine or a cutie. Those are really super easy to peel, and then you have a tighter skinned orange that's like,
I will say that,
yes, I understand. The quartering of the oranges does take more staffing and time.
Or because now you have to do baggy.
Yeah. So we're that's one of the things. Plus, production is we're trying to figure out ways to do more scratch and not just quarter oranges.
Okay, so the answer to my question is, working off of last year numbers, the number that they've signed up and, basically predicting.
Correct.
I think my questions, other than maybe the number one that had to do with the school wellness, all related to the meals.
Yes. And I have answers for all of them.
Okay, so keep going, thanks.
All right. So Kristen Robbins, who is our newest nutrition specialist, she is our school wellness council coordinator. So she runs all of our meetings, and our next meeting, just for your knowledge, is on the 21st of April at 3:45 p.m. here in Training Room 3. We've got 2 subcommittees now. One is geared towards mental health, and one is geared towards substance abuse and tobacco use. So those have kind of wardened off themselves outside of just the overarching wellness committee, and it's really awesome to see the growth in this. It's the first time in my 11 years at Capo that we've had this enthusiasm and excitement over, the wellness policy. So it's really exciting to me to see it, and I'm proud of Kristen for facilitating that. Free meals for all students, that's been going on since COVID. And with California Universal Meals going into effect, we forecast participation based on many factors. Past participation, weather has a factor. Rainy days, we end up feeding more kids historically. And then menu likability. So if the kids like something, like on Mini Cine Day at elementary schools, you got to watch out. You actually need police officers there because the kids are stealing Mini Cinis. They love them that much. The Mini Cinis. They're Pillsbury, they're called
Cinnamon
mini.
rolls.
They call them
Baby
Cine
cinnamon
Minis
rolls.
or Mini Cinis.
Okay.
So if you hear that, they're a hot commodity. Fridays, every other week, just saying. There's no daily meal sign up. We can't do any of that. And food waste is really inevitable with the way the regulations are, because a student must take a fruit or a vegetable with their lunch. They must take a fruit with their breakfast. Those tend to be the things that go in the share stations, sadly, because we have amazing fruit in our district. And so we do work with the school sites one-on-one to create food recovery plans. We have, each school site will do their own, or we just have a plan in action within food and nutrition services to bring any of those viable products back into service. They are cleaned and then put back into service for the next meal service, or the YMCA may come and pick up those items and utilize them in their after-school programs. We have some teachers that pick them up and take them to a church or a food bank, things like that. So it just differentiates school to school.
Okay, well, when Cal Prep was in the same building and addressing the need that they were being kind of fed and having to purchase, do we have the ability to give to them? Or, I mean, and that's like a whole nother trip. When you say some of the principals at schools, but because they're on Saddleback, right, college?
We feed them still.
Okay.
When the students are on campus with virtual students, if they're on campus, we can feed them. If they're at home, we're not physically allowed to feed them.
I just
But
wondered
there's-
if, since Cal Prep moved, if
We
they,
we take food over to them.
you do, thank you.
Yep, we have a whole Google Sheet system. It's flowing somewhat well. We try to tweak it and figure out better ways, but yeah. There are some different research, out there is showing that students really only consume about 30% of what's on their plate, especially our youngers. But, and less likely to consume their fruits and vegetables, of course. They don't have, they have peer interaction. They don't have adult interaction. Finish your broccoli, eat your, but we've had some great success with different things. So those are good things. The triennial reporting for participation rates, that was back in 2023. I did bring the copies. There was a board report that was provided to you. None of you were not on the board at that time. So I did bring copies if you want to see it. It is also on our website. And we will be doing another triennial assessment coming up soon. And then our Central Kitchen received dramatic results for changes from our new federal government RFK. Not yet. They're coming. The DGA's Dietary Guidelines for Americans did just come out. There is talk, lots of blah, blah, not a lot of action yet. So we're waiting. The state did just come out with something saying that there's more to come. So be patient. With our Eat Real certification, we have gone above and beyond a lot of that already. We continue to be more forward-thinking than most of the regulations anyway. So I feel like I can positively say, rest assured, we're going to be ahead of the game.
For sure you are.
I figured, but I just wondered if they've figured out something you hadn't already.
No, in all honesty, they're figuring, it's backing up the things that we're already doing or already pushing towards. Like we eliminated chocolate milk this year because of added sugars. We are probably going to have to eliminate the mini Cinnies going into future years because I know, I feel the same way. I will say, we just did a side by side because they changed the sugar to monk fruit and allulose instead of just sugar. So now it has a non-nutritive sweetener versus just plain old sugar. I personally would prefer plain old sugar,
For sure,
not,
it's so much better for you.
they're sweeter. We were hoping they wouldn't be, so the kids will like them more. We were like, darn it, shucks. But most of the regulations looking out beyond, in the future are going to eliminate non-nutritive sweeteners potentially from school meal program food items. So those are going to be kicked out anyway, unless Pillsbury goes back and reformulates again. So we'll see. It's a lot of money they put into that stuff. It takes about 2 to 3 years for them to finalize reformulation. And then, yes. Flipping. Lots of protein. There is talk about adding additional protein ounces to school meal programs. That's going to be a hard sell because of the cost factor, because reimbursement rates are not high anyway. We did that board workshop last year, and that would also kick out plant-based meals, and there's been a push over the last years, meatless Mondays, things like that, to add in more plant-based options for students who prefer that kind of, And the final question you had was about garden programs. We haven't done a recent survey, but in 2022, when we were going for a farm to school incubator grant, we did ask our schools who has a school garden. Only 29 replied, and out of those 29, 23 had school gardens. So in our annual wellness policy assessment last year, 24-25, question number 5 on that assessment states specifically, how is nutrition education provided at your site? And 30.8% indicated it is incorporated into their school garden. And that was 8 out of 26 schools that indicated that. And we only had 26 schools that filled out. So we don't have a huge, participation rate sometimes in our surveys, but that's the data we have right now.
Thank you.
And really quick, and it's not really addressed here, but it's just about the getting the lunches out. I just know because I've had students at San Juan Hills that don't eat the school lunches, and it's not even because they don't like the school lunches. They just say that it takes all of their lunch, and they're pretty social. So they're like, I didn't want to wait. They come home and they're like, will you take me to Chick-fil-A, or will you do this? I'm starving. And I'm like, no, you bring your lunch to school or get school lunch. And they're like, I hear that again and again from other students too. So is there a way to address that? Like just the speed? I mean, you guys do everything, so I hate asking you.
It is something we are challenged with for sure. Staffing is a thing, and especially at our secondary sites where we have multiple points of service. We have, since COVID, we have historically now, the last few years, had probably, I'd say, 30 positions open at any given time. A vast majority have been at our secondary sites because we want to have multiple points of service open for our students. At San Juan Hills specifically, this past year, we opened up new points of service up in the stairs, the top
that's exactly
area,
where
upper campus. We have a little electric golf cart vehicle that
That's so
has
awesome.
wings and does all kinds of fancy, food things for holding hot food, holding cold food. And there's a service space that's attached to this little vehicle. So they do drive that up every day. I have not seen the lines myself recently, but it did spread the herd. So students who would come down to the main windows area, now some of those students will stay up in that upper campus and eat off of the cart. So we have seen an increase in participation and in a kind of a spread of students, instead of them all being bunched up at the windows. Staffing wise, if we had more staff there, we would open up the auxiliary space that is also there, which is an additional, I think, 3 or 4 windows that would be available to serve. So that's our ultimate goal, and it's our ultimate goal at every school to have more points of service.
Yeah, I'm just curious if parent volunteers would be able to help, or is that something where you have to have your food and safety and no?
Yeah, mostly. We have,
That's also displaced work.
yes.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to displace
No,
work.
we can't do that. It's a lovely thought, and we thank you, but yeah, no, we're interviewing tomorrow actually, every week.
Okay, thank you. Trustees, any other comments or questions? Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Being no further business before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by trustee.
Okay,
Thank you.
please send it.
Moved by trustee Adams, second by trustee Zollinger. All those in favor say aye. Motion carries 601 to adjourn the meeting. The time is now 7:57 PM. Have a great night.